Hey, Fresh Baked. Today I want to have one of my favorite conversations about Disneyland because this conversation goes to the very heart of what, to me, makes Disneyland great. And that is what we love most about the attractions at Disneyland. Now, in our last episode, I asked you guys to choose or to declare your preference, I guess. Do you prefer IP-based attractions or attractions that are original content? And as I mentioned by that, I mean original content attractions would be Pirates of the Caribbean, Haunted Mansion, Space Mountain, that kind of thing. Whereas IP-based attractions might be Peter Pan's Flight. Well, it's basically all the dark rides in Fantasyland. Then you got stuff like Rise of the Resistance and Galaxy's Edge, or all of Galaxy's Edge for that matter. Now, the responses that we got covered pretty much the whole spectrum of possible opinions about this, but a few of them I'm going to point out kind of hit the highlights, the points that I would want to cover in the conversation. Kate Riggin, for example, said that she prefers original content for sure, but that IPs do have their place. She says that they're probably overused and used as a crutch, and that is actually a very key conversation point that we'll get to in a minute. Andy Robinson says she appreciates both. In fact, she says that the IP rides are better for children because it makes it easier for them to understand what they're watching, that they can see the films that they've watched at home come to life, as it were, in the park, which is a very cool thing, actually. Martin Horowitz, on the other hand, cares only if the ride is good. It doesn't matter if it's IP based or original, just as long as it's a fun, good ride. Now, Martin also, though, has a little dig, and this is common with some of the responses that we got for those who are supporting IP-based rides, and he feels like some of them are just cash-in efforts, and they lack creativity. All right, so Taylor C. says that IP rides are fun and all, but it's not enough to base an attraction on. Rise did so well by immersing you completely within the experience, rather than, let's say, something like Pinocchio or Winnie the Pooh. Now, what she's getting at is the book report style of attraction, which basically just tells the story of the film that it's being based on in a dark ride. Now, Rise is great because it doesn't do that, because it's a unique experience. It's more about the experience and less about the IP. The IP is just an excuse. The IP is a way to deliver the actual experience that they're going after, the trackless vehicles, the varied types of physical experiences that you counter in the ride, and then giving you that whole lived-in experience that Rise does. That's the selling point, not that it's Star Wars. And then Soul Alchemist, like some of the others have said, it's all about the experience. Indiana Jones, Splash Mountain, Radiator Springs, very good examples of IP-based attractions that are good, by the way. But for those rides, it's more about the experience than it is about the actual content. And then he does go on to say that he's afraid that we're only going to be getting IP-based rides in the future. Not a bad observation whatsoever. And it's truth, actually. It's real. Now, most rides at Disneyland are original. Most are. But anything new that we've been getting in the past, 25 years, has been IP-based. And then finally, we've got Gustavo Rodriguez, who most closely reflected my feelings on the argument between IP and original content. He says that most IPs don't stand the test of time, and that is a thing that a lot of folks forget. You take a look at places like Magic Mountain or Universal, where they have to keep changing things because people get sick of or are no longer interested in the IP that is based on. The Shrek ride at Universal, for example, and any roller coaster at Magic Mountain, they are constantly retheming those roller coaster theming. It takes more than just an IP to really pull off an attraction. And then he says that this is something that Disney is, or was, I guess, best at, and that is delivering an experience that you could only get at Disneyland. Pirates of the Caribbean, Jungle Cruise, Haunted Mansion, these are things that could only happen at a Disney park. They don't happen anywhere else. Nobody has the guts to build an original attraction like that in any other park, in the States at least. And really, isn't that why, or one of the reasons, I should say, why we love Disneyland? Because it is so unique and so original. It's not, we go to Universal and some of those rides are fun and the technology is good and they've done amazing things, but they're still leaning on Harry Potter. And Harry Potter just could have just as easily landed at some other theme park. It was almost a Disneyland for that matter. So they're not doing anything. Universal isn't doing anything that sets them apart. They built a world, Harry Potter, based on somebody else's creativity. Having said all that, having opened this conversation with those points, with those comments and my original thoughts, it is actually, and I'm going to say this right up front, this conversation is probably pointless because Disney has made it very clear that they are not interested at all in building original content rides, that they are, in fact, very interested in continuing to build rides that are based on current intellectual properties that they own. Not just in their deeds by buying up places, like Marvel and Pixar and Star Wars and the whole Fox library, but also by the things that they've said. Chapek has been on record specifically saying that IP is the barrier for entry in order to get an attraction built into a theme park, that it must be based on an intellectual property. And he said the reason for that is that if our competitors owned the things that Disney owns, that's what they would be doing. I mean, I guess I'm not sure if he fully understands, though, having said that, if that even matters. Because they are doing that. They did build Harry Potter Town, but they're still coming to Disneyland. Why? Why, Bob? Okay? Why, Bob? If attendance is higher than it's ever been at Disneyland and we haven't added anything new except for Galaxy's Edge, which, by the way, didn't go off like you thought it would, why is everybody still going to Disneyland when, these other competitors are building places like Harry Potter Town? The reason is because of the original rides. Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, Main Street. I mean, you name it. And they do this all in the name of synergy, which, I mean, it makes good business sense. You've got your movies, your theme parks, and your merchandise all working together to help support a common source or a common thing, which, again, that makes good business sense. I understand that. But it's not necessarily the answer for a theme park. There are a lot of reasons why Disneyland is the best theme park in the whole world, and I'm not sure that can this be argued? I mean, I suppose people have their preference, but if you were to take an actual, unbiased look at things, I feel like that's what everybody agrees on, right? Is that Disneyland is the best theme park in the world? Doesn't that seem like a logical... Anyway, why is that? Because they've got things that you don't get anywhere else. They have experiences, one-of-a-kind experiences, things that you can do only at Disneyland. So let's recap. I've got a list right here. Pirates of the Caribbean, Haunted Mansion, Mark Twain, Columbia. Don't sleep on Mark Twain in Columbia. Big Thunder, Space Mountain, It's a Small World, the Matterhorn. But, okay, there's more. I forgot. Disneyland Railroad, the monorail, Autopia, Main Street, and everything on it. Okay, so these are all things that Disney created out of their own imagination and their own creativity, having nothing to do with intellectual properties. Now, in fairness, Fantasyland is almost 100% based on IP. Pinocchio, all the dark rides. And for what it's worth, when the park opened in 1955, this was considered the anchor of the park. It was all about Fantasyland, and you needed those in order for people to get used to going to Disney, have a reason to experience things at Disney before they figured out what a Jungle Cruise was, or actually Haunted Mansion hadn't even been built yet, or Pirates for that matter. So I get that, and they do have their place. Definitely, I'm not saying they don't. They definitely don't, but objectively speaking, just look at the top 10 rides in the park. All but maybe Indiana Jones and Splash Mountain, perhaps, were our original attractions. The best stuff at Disneyland is original. And don't get me wrong, though. I mean, I do love the dark rides at Fantasyland, but not because I'm a huge fan of Mr. Toad. I like them because of their nostalgia, or I should say I love them, actually, because of their nostalgia and the way it makes me feel when I'm there. The vintageness of it, the fact that they've endured for 60 years, using this old school methods, that's what I love about these dark rides. It has nothing to do with any kind of love for Pinocchio as a character. I mean, I'm fond of them, but they're not my favorite characters. I much prefer Indiana Jones or Star Wars. And maybe if they made a little small, tiny dark ride of Indiana Jones, I would love that too. Imagine that. Would Disney, because they can't build anything small anymore. Look at the dark rides that they've built. Rise of the Resistance is a dark ride. That's their current vision of a dark ride today. But imagine if they built a dark ride the size of Snow White's Scary Adventures today, but for Star Wars or Indiana Jones. Just imagine. Wouldn't that be cool? I want that. I do. I want that. I want the barn doors to open to reveal Darth Vader, in Dagobah, in the jungle or something like that. I mean, I want that. That would be neat. Disney doesn't have the guts to do something like that because they feel like a property like Star Wars or Indiana Jones deserves something big and fantastic. But I'm here to tell you that that's not why we go to Disneyland. We don't go to Disneyland for the big and fantastic. We don't. You think you do, and maybe some do, but the majority of us don't go for the big and fantastic. We go because of the way it makes us feel. Main Street, Fantasyland, Frontierland and Adventureland, the nuance and the detail and the quaintness and the nostalgia and the simplicity of it all. That's why we go. We get that feeling on Main Street not because they hit us over the head with it, because they didn't hit us over the head with it. So why is it then? Why has Disney seemingly given up on the concept of the original ride? And it's very simple. One word is all you need to know to explain why they've given up on it, and that is fear. Fear of failure, fear of missing, fear of people not liking a thing, putting in a whole bunch of money, and then the people rejecting it. I mean, today it takes like 3 years and $1 gazillion to build a ride today, like Rise of the Resistance or something like that. It takes that long, and you can't make a mistake. You can't undo. There's no reset button for Galaxy's Edge, you guys. There's no reset button. There's no. The last time they hit the reset button was on DCA 2.0, and it cost them $1 billion, $1 billion and they still didn't go all the way. They only fixed Buena Vista Street and added Cars Land. They really didn't do much else besides that. Well, I guess World of Color, I don't know, but anyway, they didn't fix what was really wrong with DCA. But that's a whole conversation for another video. So, in order to reduce the likelihood of guests rejecting a thing, they go with what they can count on, what people know already. It doesn't help that you've got people constantly asking them, where's my Hercules ride? That doesn't help at all, because that's all the people say. But the problem with listening to guests when they say stuff like that is that we as a collective, the Disney guest, as our entire, populace, lack creativity and inspiration. We are not creative, or as creative as top-level Imagineers can be. We don't understand or can even conceive of the kind of things like they have at Disneyland. There's nobody, for example, on Twitter asking Disney, where is my riverboat excursion ride through the jungles of America where we get to see animals in their natural habitat on board a realistic-looking Jungle Cruise boat? I promise you there's nobody on Twitter asking that question. Instead, Twitter's on there saying, a Monsters, Inc. hanging door ride. That sounds awesome. Now, in fairness to that comment that sounds snarky, I think that a hanging door ride would be awesome, and I would very much like to experience that. But that proves my point. I lack the creativity also to even go outside the box, and I'm just thinking about things that I already know. I can't imagine things I don't already know. Now, a lot of times they say things like that about the door hanging ride, and there's always that caveat that they add, if done correctly. And therein lies the problem, is that so often with IP-based attractions, they are not done correctly. Or I should say, what they wind up doing is something like the skin, where they drop a skin, i.e. The Pixar Pier, Incredicoaster and things like that. A skin is not obviously a fully realized, fully conceived execution of an IP attraction. Rise of the Resistance and Smuggler's Run at Galaxy's Edge are two high quality, very good attractions, but they're good not because they're Star Wars. They're good because it's a fully realized, fully complete, fully developed experience. with the ride itself and with the queue and the theming and all that stuff. They did, they went 100% on those attractions, and that's why they work. But like I mentioned, head over to DCA and go ride Monsters Inc. or Ariel's Undersea Adventure, and you see that they lack inspiration, they lack creativity. Those are just book report rides. They just dropped the story, into a dark ride. As a matter of fact, Monsters Inc. is even worse because Monsters Inc. is a reskin of the of Superstar Limo ride. It's the same bones. It's the same bones as Superstar Limo, and they just dropped Monsters Inc. characters in there. And then, as I mentioned, you got things like Incredicoaster and Emotional Whirlwind, the Pixar Pal Around. I mean, and there's more, and some of them are actually not bad, but in general, they lack. Midway Mania, it's good. Okay, Midway Mania is good. It's not great, I don't think. But in general, those kind of rides, they do lack something. There's something missing. Cars Land is the closest thing to great that they have. Radiator Springs Racers is a great ride, in my opinion, and it is a great example of a modern dark ride. But hearing all that, it does make it seem super easy. Build it original if you can, and if you can't, if you're doing an IP, then do it right. But I mean, of course not. It's not easy, and that's because Disney thinks it's about the IP and not about the ride experience. Or I should say, I think the Imagineers get it. It's the people who make the actual final decisions that don't get it. I actually have a lot of faith in Imagineers because look what they have done when given the opportunity. Radiator Springs Racers, Indiana Jones, Galaxy's Edge. They can do it. And with that, that's where I'm going to end this video, with this plea to Disney in the hopes that they are listening. Trust your Imagineers. Synergy can go both ways. It has gone both ways. We've seen it happen. Instead of building rides that are based on an existing intellectual property, build a unique, original creation like Pirates of the Caribbean, and then make movies off of that. Start a billion-dollar franchise like you did with Pirates of the Caribbean. Multi-billion-dollar franchise like you did with Pirates of the Caribbean. That, I feel like, is easier or just as easy as creating an original film. Like how much money it takes to create a film like, a Pixar movie. It's like $200-300 million to create that. That's the cost of an attraction at Disneyland. So it's not like your investment or your risk is any less in that sense. Go for it. Create it. Give your Imagineers a proper budget and proper flexibility to express their creativeness, like you did with Indiana Jones and with Radiator Springs and with Galaxy's Edge. And if you're worried, Disney, about failure, understand. Just go to DCA. Understand and observe that IP-based attractions can also fail and have failed. I mean, I don't know, to use a better word, they suck. Some of them suck, okay? I don't know, that is a reality. Not to mention, they don't last. Pirates is timeless. Haunted Mansion is timeless. They are still going strong, still the most popular attractions at Disneyland, 50 years later. Build it once and then let it rule instead of having to build an IP-based attraction. People get sick of it, and then you got to reskin that attraction, and then the reskin becomes worse than the original attraction because, the whole copy of a copy thing, it just it degrades over time. It gets worse and worse. And that's all we got for you today on this topic, Fresh Baked. But I do want to leave you with this for our next episode. The conversation I want to have is about the future of what kind of guests we should expect to find at Disneyland in the new world with COVID-19. Do you think that it's possible that both Walt Disney World and Disneyland could become locals-only parks? Is that the future of theme parks? I'll ask you this, would you, as a traveler, skip going to Disneyland because you had to make a reservation? You're coming from out of state. Would you even bother going to Disneyland or trying to make a reservation if you could only do it 30 days in advance or something like that? Let us know in the comments below. And until next time, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and to hit that notification bell so that you can be told when we're going to have a video ready for you and published. And until next time, fresh baked.